Our Select Committee has taken evidence from a number of business organisations and businesses, and the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industries said on the issue of regulation, it would really not make sense for us to have something where we had a divergent regulation. You, Prime Minister, have spoken about regulatory alignment. I wonder precisely what does that mean, and how is it different, if it is, from what we have today?
Well, what I set out in the Florence speech was that if we look at the question of regulations and directives, they fall into different categories. There are some of those that are of no impact on trade relations, have no relevance to trade relations. There will be some areas where we have the same goals, the same objectives in terms of regulation, but wish to achieve them by different means. There will be other areas where we have the same goals and accept that they should be achieved by the same means. As part of the negotiations, we now go into the process of looking at that in detail and determining, as one would in any trade agreement, there is an agreement as to the regulations, the standards on which that trade is going to take place. That's what we will now be doing with the European Union.
So regulatory alignment could mean that we have different rules and regulations here compared with what they have in the other European Union countries. Regulatory alignment might include, under what you've set out, different rules and regulations here compared with what's on the rest of the continent.
Alignment means that we have the same objectives. We may achieve those objectives by the same means, or we may choose to achieve those objectives by different means. In any trade agreement, that will be part of the discussion that takes place, part of the negotiation that takes place, and it'll be no different here.
So, when we took evidence from the Food and Drink Federation, they said that convergence is a good thing, convergence of regulations is a good thing because it brings down the cost. If we have different rules and regulations, even if we have the same objectives, Prime Minister, that might mean higher costs for industry. The food and drink industry seem to think that. In the car manufacturing sector, they spoke about semi-catastrophic effects of having to stop production if EU-type approvals weren't able to be provided by the UK vehicle certification. They are worried, businesses are worried about us diverging from the rules and regulations. Even if we have the same objectives, they're worried about diverging from the specific rules and regulations because that will make it harder for trade. Is that what businesses are saying to you, Prime Minister? Do you understand their concerns?
What businesses want to be able to do is to continue to trade as tariff-free and as frictionless a basis with the European Union as they are able to do today. In one of the examples that you cited, I think it showed how this can be achieved in a number of ways, because it referenced UK authorities being able to deliver, if you like, the standards that are expected in the European Union. This is, in any trade relationship, in order to be able to have that trade on the basis that is negotiated, agreements will be reached as to what the standards are, what the regulations under which that trade takes place. This will be no different. What we're going into now is a negotiation which will look at different areas and will, and we're very clear that will be goods and services, and we'll be discussing how we achieve that trade and what that overall trading relationship should be.
The reason why the Vehicle Certification Agency in the UK can give those type of approvals is because we are a member of the European Union. It's similar with other areas. For example, the European Aviation Safety Agency or the European Medicines Agency. In the House last week, your Brexit Minister Dominic Raab said that where there is a demonstrable national interest in pursuing a continued relationship with an agency or other EU body, the government will look very carefully at that. Will the government look at whether we might remain in things like the European Aviation Safety Agency or the European Medicines Agency, or indeed EURATOM? Are those possibilities, are any of those still on the table?
Well, I would, if I may differentiate between the various bodies that you have cited there. I mean, on the European Aviation Safety Agency, actually it's UK expertise that has made a significant contribution to the high standards of aviation safety that we have in Europe, and we would intend to maintain consistently high standards. So, of course, we will look at the question of our continued participation in EASA, but that, as I say, will be a matter for the negotiations. The reason I said I wanted to differentiate between the agencies you've cited is because Euratom is a different-ish case because of the very unique legal relationship in relation to Euratom. And that's why when we formally notified of our intention to leave the EU, we started the process for leaving Euratom, because they do share a common institutional framework which makes them, as I say, uniquely legally joined. But what we are doing, as you know, we've been putting a nuclear safeguards bill through in the, which has started in the House of Lords. We've agreed principles for addressing the key separation issues relating to our withdrawal from Euratom. That includes safeguards, future regime, principles of ownership for most special fissile material. And we're going to continue to apply international standards on nuclear safety as agreed by the International Atomic Energy Authority. So it's a good example of where we will be leaving a particular institution but continuing to operate on a basis that enables people to continue to have confidence in what the UK is doing and continue to work with us and move material between us.